Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Testing, testing.
I can hear.
Okay, we can hear you, Alejandro.
Alejandro is B104.
Yeah, I'm in B104.
Recording in progress.
Let's go.
Okay, we have a quorum, so we're going to call this meeting to order at 9:06 a.m. Thank you to everyone taking your time to attend the meeting today. In the unlikely event that we need to evacuate, our assembly area is at the parking lot corner of North First Street and River Oaks across from Starbucks. The nearest AED devices in the main lobby by the security guard and restrooms are outside the double doors. Nancy, let's have roll, please.
Member Abekoga? Absent. Member Arenas? Absent. Member Bozo? Absent. Member Burt?
Here.
Member Candelas?
Here.
Member Cohen?
Here.
Member Young? Absent. Member Foley? Absent. Member Jane?
Here.
Member Kamei?
Here.
Member McAllister? Absent. Member Montano? Absent. Member Moore? Absent. Member Mulcahy? Absent. Member Sell?
Here.
Member Turner?
Here.
Member Weinberg?
Here.
Vice Chair Mahan? Absent. And Chair Lopez? Absent.
All right.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Nancy. The main agenda item for today is item 2.1. It's an update on the 2026 to 36 strategic plan process. First, last night we received a letter from the general manager, and there's also a copy, I think, on our desk. As the letter states, Carolyn is not here today, but her message underscores the importance of the work that we're doing. Strategic plan is not just a document, but a unifying vision about preparing for our future by prioritizing innovation, accessibility, and accountability. And we can only do that by working together and getting feedback from everyone on the board. Board's leadership is crucial, and we should all actually participate today and provide high-level direction. So let's start. I think Deborah is going to start and open up.
All right. Thank you so much, Director Cohen. I'm Deborah DeGang. I am the Chief Planning Officer here at VTA, and really pleased to bring to you today as our solo workshop item. So also really appreciate you making time in your days to really focus on this for this as a one-topic workshop on the strategic plan. So we brought to you at the August board meeting an overview of our approach to the strategic plan, some of the work and the inreach and outreach that we're doing. And today we're really going to focus on getting your input on a number of specifics. So thank you again for making the time. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rahul Sagamani to give you a little bit more detail. And then he'll also introduce our consultant team who will be doing the bulk of the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, board members. Again, Rahul Sagamani, Multimodal Planning Manager here at VTA. Again, welcome. As Deborah mentioned, we started this process maybe about 8 months ago. And in that time, we collected data, worked with the public, worked internally to gather input to where we're at right now. And this is really an important part of the process where we are developing the mission, vision, and goals for the strategic plan and for the agency. This is going to be an interactive workshop with you all to really get strong feedback. And in the coming months, what's going to happen is we're going to start to work on the framework of the actual strategic plan document, where we're then going to move on to initiatives and actions as part of this. So with that, I'm going to introduce our partners from InfraStrategies who are helping us with the strategic plan process. We have Joshua Shank, the managing partner for InfraStrategies, and Emma Huang, who are both here to walk us through this workshop. So I'll turn it over to them. Thanks.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Great to see you again. Thanks for having me back to talk more about the strategic plan and really get your input. This is a really important component of what we do when we think about strategic planning, because strategic planning is not just about having the organization aligned, but also the board is a critical part of that. And so we want everyone to feel like they are a part of what we're going to eventually develop and put out there. that is the strategic plan and that guides the mission, vision, and goals of the organization for the next 5 to 10 years. So this is an important document, and most critically, it's a document that's intended to lead to action. And so we're going to talk about what that means and what that looks like. But in order to get to actions, you have to have a framework. And that's the course of what we're going to go through today is the strategic plan framework. So we're going to start with just kind of going back over the purpose of the plan and how we've developed what we've developed so far. And then we'll go into how we've done some of the internal, external engagement. We know that approach in terms of how we've engaged people within the organization and in the larger community is really critical to a successful strategic plan. So we're going to go through some of the findings that we've got from that. And then the bolded part you see on your screen here is the most critical component of what we're trying to accomplish today, which is to get your feedback on the draft mission, vision, and goals. So when I speak about the framework of the strategic plan, I'm talking about the mission, vision, and goals, because those are the things that set the overarching point of the plan, right? Before you get to actions of what you're going to do, you have to know what it is you're trying to accomplish, and that's what the framework is all about. And so before we get into the details of what are we going to do, today is to make sure we're on the right track and get your feedback on the mission, vision, and goals. And we'll also go through the next steps of where we go from here and how we are going to get to a full-blown strategic plan. So let me go through the overview, and I know I did this at the board meeting in August, so I apologize if it's redundant, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page about how we got here. But you have seen this previously, and I think Rahul even went over it last fall, so the process has been out there for a while. Here's the purpose of a strategic plan, just as a reminder, right, is that it provides the strategic direction for the organization. In this case, it's a 10-year plan with a 5-year update. So that's strategic direction for a substantial period of time. Doesn't mean it won't be updated during that time. It can be. But this is what we're intending to accomplish over the next 5 to 10 years. It's intended to account for the trends that we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years to understand how things have changed and how we need to change in order to adjust for those trends. And we're setting an ambitious goal here because we want to clear a path for VTA to emerge as a superior, best-in-class transportation agency. That's something that has been Carolyn's direction and Deborah's direction from the beginning of something that we want to accomplish here. And it's also intended to align all VTA plans and programs and services towards a common vision. And it covers everything VTA does. So it's about the leadership, but it's also about VTA as a workplace, an employer, at service delivery investments, and the CMA. So it's a pretty broad scope and a pretty important purpose that we're trying to accomplish with this document. And just as a reminder, the last strategic plan was from 2017 to 22, and so this is there was also a business plan that was from 25 to 26. So these things are essentially being replaced by this new strategic plan. So the business plan framework, while still relevant and informs this, is now integrated into the strategic plan itself. And the framework that was developed 2017-22 is very similar to what we're presenting today in the sense of the structure, the mission, vision, values. But then we have goals, and then we're going to have objectives, and we're going to have actions, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in this plan. Here's the way that the new strategic plan is structured. So we've got, as I said, the mission, vision, and goals. Along with those goals come specific KPIs. So how are we measuring success is something that will be a critical part of the plan. And then the objectives and the initiatives. The initiatives are, what do we do? And again, we're not talking about that today because we want to make sure before we define what the initiatives are, we want to make sure we're clear on the mission, vision, and goals and KPIs. So the core values of the plan, as proposed at the moment, are the same as the previous strategic plan. And that's Carolyn's direction, that she wanted us to maintain those same core values because those haven't really changed, right? Safety, integrity, quality, sustainability, diversity, accountability, those remain the core values of this organization. And they continue to inform the direction of the organization. So the strategic plan will be framed around these core values, right? Because just to go back for a second, remember the core values run across everything we do. So they're still really relevant, but they are not changing from the last plan. So those are going to remain in place. Just to put this all in context of where we are in this process and make sure we're all on the same page about that, We've already finished the data review and stakeholder interviews, conducted a lot of interviews across the organization and outside the organization, and we looked at a lot of data to understand the trends that have been occurring in the region and in the county. All of that was conducted earlier this year. And then more recently, we did an executive workshop. We did the board presentation that you were all a part of. We worked with Carolyn to develop this framework and with the ELT to figure out, okay, what does this framework look like? And now we're really at the point where we're trying to finalize that framework and get your feedback so that we can move forward the rest of the fall and winter with the development of the action plan matrix. And the action plan matrix, again, is what are we actually going to do and how do we hold ourselves accountable to those things to make sure that they get done. The final strategic plan will include all the actions as well as the framework that we're working on today, and then we can begin implementation and tracking and make sure that we're doing what we said we were going to do. So that's the framework and that's the process. Now let's talk a little bit about what we found in our engagement with frontline employees and InReach, because this is some of the most critical work that goes into a strategic plan, especially because most of your employees are frontline employees, and frontline employees are critical to everything you do, and so you have to really spend a lot of time engaging them. It's not as simple as it might seem. It takes a lot of time and effort to really go out there and do it, and that's what we've been doing. So what we've completed so far in terms of internal engagement, as I mentioned, the department interviews, we interviewed ELT, we interviewed labor leadership, we had the ELT workshop. But we also had these pop-ups and town halls at every single division, right? So that we've been out there and able to talk to the frontline employees and understand their perspectives on what VTA should be trying to accomplish over the next 5 to 10 years. And now we had that board presentation in August. Upcoming, so we're doing today's an opportunity for you to provide feedback. We have been working with you to schedule one-on-one interviews as well, so that'll be an opportunity for you to offer feedback one-on-one. There will be an employee lunch and learn coming up, pop-up at River Oaks headquarters. Those are going to continue. There'll be a second round of department interviews in order to help formulate some of the action items and make sure that we're getting people's input on that. There will be an online survey, and then there will be another workshop with ELT. So internal engagement, as you can see, is a big focus of how we gather information and make sure we're developing this plan appropriately. This is an example of how much we've done and how much we still have to do in this area. But we've also done a substantial amount of external engagement, right? It's not just about what people in the organization think. We've spent a good amount of time talking to various stakeholders and getting their perspectives. That includes the folks on this list and many people in the business community. We've also talked to partner agencies in the region to make sure we're understanding their perspectives on VTA, having some good candid conversations on that. We've conducted stakeholder roundtables where we brought in stakeholders and worked through this framework and discussed it with them. We've had targeted presentations to different groups that are listed here. And we've talked to all the advisory committees. I know policy is not listed here, but we did talk to them as well. So all the advisory committees about this effort. And then we have, as we'll talk a little bit about later, a public open house scheduled for September. So that's just anyone who wants to be a part of it can come and be a part of that public open house. So just to give you a little bit of the frontline employee InReach findings, right? This is very candid feedback that we received. So frontline employees have pride in working for VTA. They feel it's important. They feel it matters. They care about their riders, and they value service to the community. However, they did express concerns in some areas, including about their personal safety and the safety of riders, the challenges with respect to housing affordability, and the challenges of operating effectively. Those are the things that are definitely on their minds. Part of the reason that they gave for why some of these things are happening, right? Chronic absences definitely contribute to operational challenges. Inadequate facilities, that doesn't make them feel particularly good or safe. and particularly the inconsistent fare and customer code of conduct enforcement. Security is just an issue that we've heard a lot about, both from the workers and from riders, right? So security seems like something that has to be addressed in this plan based on the feedback we've heard. The work-life balance challenges, because of housing affordability, because of commuting times, that makes it difficult. Makes it very difficult to maintain a good work-life balance if you're spending so much time commuting that you don't have time with your family, and you're either working or you're commuting. That's a tough way to go. And then this is interesting that it came up repeatedly that VTA tends to have good initiatives and start things that are important, but don't necessarily complete them, and there's not enough accountability or follow-through on some of the initiatives that VTA is trying to do. So that's really important to keep in mind, because a strategic plan is all about the follow-through, right? If you don't follow through on everything you say you're going to do in the plan, you actually lose trust from both the public and the workforce. So it's really important that we do that in this plan, and it's good to take that feedback and really incorporate it as we move forward. Okay, so with that, I'm now going to move on to the strategic plan framework itself and talk through what the framework looks like, what the components are, and this is really, again, what we're looking for your feedback on today. Again, just to make sure we're all on the same page about what we mean when we say the framework. The entire strategic plan is there on the left-hand side, right? The core values, and then run through everything, and then you have the mission, vision, goals, KPIs, and then objectives and initiatives. The objectives and initiatives, which are in brown, have not been developed yet, right? We don't have those yet. Those fall out of the mission, vision, and goals, because we have to understand what the mission, vision, and goals are before we can develop objectives and initiatives that accomplish them, right? So what we're going to do today is we're going to be able to present these to you, and then we have an exercise that is intended to get your feedback on these, right? So you will have an opportunity through that exercise to give us your feedback, and we'll have some discussion about it. So that's going to be the meat of what we accomplish today, right? We're going to really spend some time together and learn what your perspectives are on the mission, vision, and goals, because that's what we have here. And again, the core values have already been set, so we're not really discussing those, but the mission, vision, and goals are all available for conversation. So the mission, and just to, it's always, people have a tendency, everybody, me, the whole world tends to like, oh, can we change this word? Can we do that? Yes, you can. These are just suggestions, but I would focus less on the specific words and more on the underlying intent of what we're trying to get at here with the mission and vision as you think about how you want to provide feedback. Because if you agree with the intent, we can always shape the words a little bit better. People tend to overemphasize what specific word is being used in a mission and vision, when what really matters is what are you conveying, what's the larger intent. So for the mission says improving your transportation experience through collaboration and innovation. So this mission reflects the idea that transportation experience, not just on public transit, but throughout the county and to the extent that you're involved in the larger region, throughout the region, the transportation experience is what needs to improve. People need to have a better quality transportation experience than they have today if VTA is to be successful in accomplishing its mission. Because remember, a mission is, what are we doing every day? Why do we come to work? What is our purpose? The purpose is that you want to improve the transportation experience. So it's what you're trying to do in that first clause. Then it says how you're going to try to do those things. And the two things that kept rising to the top in our conversations were collaboration and innovation. Collaboration, because you can't do this alone. This is California, and this is the world we live in. You have to work with your partners in both private sector and public sector to accomplish the things that you care about in terms of improving the transportation experience. So collaboration is going to be critical, but also innovation. We've heard from this board, we've heard from Carolyn, we've heard from pretty much everybody that's involved that you can't just keep doing things the same way if you're going to be successful in improving the transportation experience. You have to do things differently. So innovation is a critical component of how we will improve the transportation experience going forward. So that's how the mission was constructed. Now, vision, remember, a vision is in 5 to 10 years, when we've accomplished everything in this plan, what are we going to have? What are we going to have created in this county? What's going to be different? What's our vision for the future? And so here it's VTA will lead Santa Clara County towards a more secure and prosperous future by providing dynamic transportation solutions that enable a diversity of multimodal options for users, a healthy and welcoming environment for our employees, and sustainable economic growth. So what is that vision saying? Let's break it down a little bit. First of all, it starts with VTA will lead. So the idea being that VTA is intending to provide a leadership role in accomplishing this vision. VTA is not just part of it, VTA is a leader. And these are the things that it's going to lead towards, right? So it's going to lead toward a more secure and prosperous future. Remember earlier I said security came up a lot. It came up with workers, it came up with passengers. Security is an issue, and we felt that putting that up front and saying it and out loud and being clear about it was important. But also prosperous future, because why do we care about improving the transportation experience? Why do we care about making mobility work better in the county? Because presumably we care about prosperity. We care about people's economic well-being. And so secure and prosperous went up front for that reason. And then how do we do that? Well, dynamic transportation solutions. That's getting, again, at the issue of innovation, thinking about how we can do this in a way that's different than we've done it before, right? And recognizing that it's a variety of transportation solutions, not just public transit, that will get us there. Second, enable a diversity of multimodal options. Again, emphasizing that VTA is not just a transit agency, but is a transportation agency, and to be successful in improving the transportation experience, we're going to have to use multimodal options, not just one mode. It's going to take a diversity of modes to enable users to have that better experience. Healthy and welcoming environment for our employees, recognizing the challenges that VTA has faced and that a lot of employees do not feel that that exists today, and we want to create that. Putting that right up front in the vision emphasizes to your employees that this is something that is a top priority. And then sustainable economic growth. Again, returning to the theme that the purpose here is to provide the economic growth for the county and for the region. That's why VTA exists, and closing with that. So again, we can mess with the words, we can take out some clauses, there's lots of things you can do here, but the overarching vision, I think, is very clear. It's about leadership, and it's about using multimodal transportation solutions to achieve a more secure and prosperous future. So, under the mission and vision are the goals. Now, when it comes to goals, it's generally a good idea to have fewer rather than too many, right? If you have too many goals, it muddles the priorities. It's not clear about what you're trying to do. 6 is pretty much the maximum that we would go for. I've seen some agencies do 7. We do a lot of strategic planning for transit, and typically this is where we have to kind of push back and say, you know what, 6 is enough. Sometimes you can do 5. I've seen people do 4. Depends how big the agency is. We settled on 6, and these are what they are. Right? Improved mobility, which of course is center of what you're doing. Engaged workforce, bringing that up to the front as usual. Organizational excellence, making sure the organization works well. Financial sustainability, of course, you have to be fiscally sustainable. Economic development, again, getting back to that theme, and then enhanced safety. So I'm going to go through each of these goals in a little more detail to kind of talk about where they came from and why they're considered so important. All right, so improved mobility. Starting with mobility, not very surprising for a transportation agency, but again, what we heard is that the customer experience is what is most critical, and that's something that needs to be addressed. And so we start by setting our sights high and saying dramatically upgrading customer experience with high quality service, meaning that people will feel that the service they're getting is high quality, that it is not just the backup. For example, when you don't have a car, here's what you can use and it's not as good. No, this is high quality service, and it is multimodal. It's not just about the transit service, but it's about everything that VTA provides, allowing people to have a better experience in transportation. as they travel throughout the county and the region. So transforming regional mobility is a very ambitious, but we believe achievable goal. Engaged workforce. So we want to have a dynamic environment, meaning an environment that is changing where from what it is today and constantly changing and improving, where trust is at the cornerstone of what you have here, where you have trust between employees and workers, between management and workers, where you have a mission that attracts and retains top talent, meaning that you want people, as you already have, who want to work here, who care about the mission of the organization. You do have that, but we want to make sure that that stays with the organization and that there's a greater sense of trust that is built underneath that to make sure that you continue to attract and retain the top talent. Okay, organizational excellence. Any public organization faces challenges in efficiency and in how it operates, right? So there are opportunities to improve VTA in terms of how the governance and administrative efficiency works, and this is going to be a process of, hey, how is it working? What are the things that work well? What are the things that don't? Let's really take a hard look at this and see what we can improve. Because just like everything else, you can't sit still with how the organization is structured. Organizational structure has to change as circumstances change, as goals change, as all the things you're trying to do might change. You want to make sure that you're adjusting that organizational structure to meet the times that you're in. Financial sustainability, right? If the organization doesn't have its finances in order, it can't continue to accomplish its mission. So this is a critical component, and it's not just about keeping costs in line, it's also about increasing revenues. Where can we find those places to increase revenues, whether it's TOD or other opportunities that will allow VTA to continue to carry out its mission effectively? And where are we going to make sure that we cut costs in a way that is in line with our mission to make sure that we're continuing to be financially sustainable and not just adding to cost all the time? Those types of strategies for financial sustainability are absolutely critical, and we felt that this rose to the level of a goal. Okay, economic development. TOD and the need for transit-oriented development and a more sustainable development pattern came up again and again in the research we were doing, in the interviews we conducted. This seemed to rise to the level of a core component of what VTA needs to do because, quite frankly, without changing those travel patterns, everything else is going to be very difficult to accomplish. You're not going to be able to have greater mobility. You're not going to be able to have economic growth. All those things hinge on having a more effective and sustainable development pattern, including but not limited to transit-oriented development, right? TOD is a part of that, but VTA can also be a catalyst, as it says here, for transformative growth that is more transit-centric and that is more people-centric than what you have today, not just through TOD, but certainly TOD is a big part of it. And then finally, safety, right? First of all, you're a transportation organization, so safety has to be center to what you do, right? People put their trust in you when they use your vehicles or ride on your facilities, so safety has to be a part of it. But we also have security in here. You know, that distinction often gets muddled, right? Safety is more when we think about vehicles. Security is your personal security. Both are absolutely critical because if people don't feel safe, they're not going to use your services, right? And if they don't use your services, again, all the other things you care about won't be accomplished. So this is the idea that everyone interacting with VTA should feel safe and comfortable. It's a very ambitious but absolutely critical thing that you need to accomplish, and that's why it's the final goal. Okay, so at this point, we're now going to move into this sticky note exercise. And this is your opportunity to provide feedback. Now, this is not the only opportunity, right? There will be discussion about this later. So, but this is like your opportunity to write down what you see as the things that really matter here. So that's why we framed this in terms of these 3 questions, right? And there's a easel. We're going to turn these around, but there are easels that have each of these questions on them, and you have sticky notes in front of you, so you can write responses to each of these questions. We'll give you 15 minutes to write those responses, and then we'll take a break to kind of analyze what we've got. We'll come back and go through the next steps that are following this plan, and then we'll have some discussion at the end. So here are the questions. First, what resonates the most with you about the strategic plan framework, right? What is it that you see in here that you think, yeah, that's really important. I like that. What can you reinforce for us to say that's really important? It's good to know where you think, hey, yeah, that's good. You really nailed it. And then secondly, what do you care about that you don't see here? Are we missing something that you feel is really important that you think needs to be incorporated into the strategic framework? Or maybe it'll be incorporated into the objectives and actions that come later. It doesn't matter. The key is, what do you care about that you would like to see in here that you don't see? And then third, and this is a really important question because, you know, whenever people talk about new initiatives, they tend to focus on, well, that's going to be really hard, right? And it is. It is going to be hard. Like we're setting ambitious goals here. Well, if it is going to be hard, what will it take to overcome the obstacles? If this is something you care about, if you like what you see here, let's think about, well, what are the obstacles and what will it take to overcome them? It's such a more positive framing than saying like, well, this will never work and here's why. Instead, we're saying, okay, these are the challenges we can expect to face. So what do we need to put in the plan to make sure that we're ready to overcome those obstacles? And who better to help us figure that out than you? So those are the three questions. We've got 15 minutes for you to write things down and put them on the easels. You can see the easels here, right? One over there. And then after that, there will be a 15-minute break. And we're going to be taking a look at what we're seeing and kind of organizing what we're seeing on these easels, and then we will return somewhere around 10 after 10 to continue with next steps, and then we'll get to the discussion. So, all sound good? Yes. Yeah. All right. Let's do it. Thank you so much.
So just to be a little bit repetitive, we're going to assume it's about 9:40 right now, so we'll give you till about 9:55 to write your comments and put the Post-its on the easels.
And just a reminder to all our board members, while we do the exercise, the audio and cameras will still be on. So behave accordingly.
Recording stopped.
To the members of the public joining us in Zoom, we'll just take a quick break and the board workshop meeting will resume at 10:10.
Cameras are off, so we can go crazy now.
Recording in progress.
It's 10:10 and we will begin shortly. Sorry, I'm in your way.
All right, bring us back and over to our project team.
All right, so let's talk through the next steps after this meeting, just so we're all on the same page about what's going to happen going forward to make this into a final strategic plan. So one of the next steps we're going to do is developing KPIs. KPIs are measurable indicators to allow us to evaluate how effectively the agency is going to be achieving its goals over time. So it's not like you're going to necessarily have a KPI for each goal. You know, KPIs will run across multiple goals, right? Sometimes, like something like ridership, for example, if that was a KPI, that touches on a number of things you might want to accomplish. You might be measuring that. So it's not necessarily just to a specific goal, but they are really helpful in keeping everyone focused on what is the metric, what is the thing I want to see improvement in over the next 5 to 10 years. And so we're going to spend some time developing what those look like. They provide a great snapshot of organizational performance, and they are tracked over time and regularly reported. Part of the key to successful KPIs is transparency, right? It's not just internally, oh, we know how we're doing, but we're talking about it publicly, and we're admitting where we're falling short, and we're also making sure that we're clear about what we need to achieve. So the public nature of KPIs is something that we think is really important. So the next and more challenging step is to develop the action plan matrix itself, right? Because the action plan matrix is kind of the core of what you're going to do over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's the hard part. The way that we put together an action plan matrix is we'll have objectives, right? So once we finalize the goals, okay, under each goal, there will be specific objectives. And what that means is something a little more specific than the broad goal. Like the broad goal can be mobility, for example, but what specific things and areas of mobility are you going to touch on? That's where you get into objectives. And then under each objective, there may be a few initiatives. The initiatives are very specific. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to evaluate success for what we're doing. This is the timeline for what we're doing. And we're going to assign internally responsibility for those actions so that someone is held accountable internally for delivering those actions, even if the action requires collaboration, which all of them certainly will. Even if the action is not solely under the control of one human being, which it almost certainly is not, we're going to have people who are responsible for those actions and are able to be the ones that we look to make sure that we're achieving the metrics that are associated with that action item. So, for example, you might have an action item that you're going to accomplish within the first year of the strategic plan because it's a top priority and it's going to be something that's absolutely critical to achieving the goal and you have to do it first. Whereas other things might take time and you might say we're going to, somewhere in the 3 to 5 year period is when we expect this action to be completed because although it's really important, we have to do some other things before we get to it. So each action will be associated with a time frame. A lot of the feedback that we're going to go over, that we heard from you today, will really inform some of these objectives and initiatives, right? It's not just going to inform the framework that we discussed earlier, the mission, vision, and goals. It will also inform that. But it might, and I think it will, having looked at what you've written, inform some of the specific objectives and initiatives that are in this plan. And so that's really great that we're getting that feedback from you today. So this is just an example of how this all works. And again, this is an example. This is not in the plan. So just so we all know that this is just to show you how this might work. Under engaged workforce, one of the goals that we have, an example objective might be provide a safe and modern workplace for all employees, right? That's a little more specific about like what are we going to do to create an engaged workforce with trust and where people are attracted and retained. Well, one of the objectives we might do is, okay, let's provide a safe and modern workplace for all employees. But that, again, is still kind of general. What does that actually mean? Well, an example specific initiative would be improve operator restroom access at end-of-line or layover locations, something we've heard about, actually. But again, this is a sample, not in the plan. But that's something you could have. And for example, we might say, okay, well, bus ops, you're in charge of this. And we want to see this done within year 1 to 3 of the plan, right? So that's how the matrix will shape up. And you can see these specifics really help guide implementation, right? It's very easy to have a plan that sets out a grand vision and then doesn't actually accomplish it. In order to accomplish it, you have to get specific and you have to hold people accountable for the things you put in the plan, and that's what we're intending to do with this action matrix. So where do we go from here? I already showed this earlier, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, we will now be at the point where we're ready to start developing those initiatives and objectives, again, based on the feedback we've heard today, but also we're going to start talking to individual departments and say, look, now we've got the mission, vision, and goals. What do you think we should do? What are the things that will accomplish these? Because people within the organization do tend to have a pretty good read on what it would take to accomplish the goals of the organization. And so those interviews will be very helpful. But again, we've also had and continue to have public engagement, frontline engagement, and continued board engagement that will also inform these initiatives. Once that's done, we will make sure that the entire executive team is on board with these strategic initiatives, because they ultimately will be held responsible for the implementation, right? So they have to feel comfortable with the timeline, the metrics, the KPIs, everything, if we're going to then hold them accountable for it. And so we'll work through that in another workshop coming up this fall. And then we will be in a position to start drafting the strategic plan and come back to you and update you on that process and where we are and what we found. And then finally, we'll be in a position to finalize the plan and submit it to you for adoption later in 26, hopefully spring, summer. So that's the strategy and process going forward for completion. I want to make sure that Gretchen has a chance to come up and talk a little bit about our next major event, which is the upcoming open house.
There we go. Good morning. I just wanted to take a minute to let you all know that next Thursday we are having a pretty extensive open house to celebrate the strategic plan. This open house will feature VTA projects and programs. We've got Measure B, TOD. I believe we've got 10 program areas that we're showcasing. And the intent really is to invite the public in to ask them to give feedback, but to allow them to understand our projects and programs so that they can give really meaningful feedback on our strategic plan. So we're celebrating our 30th birthday, we're recognizing the work that we're doing today, and then we're looking ahead at the next 10 years. So I invite you all to come. We would love to have you share this information with your constituents so that we can spread the word, but we're really looking forward to this in-person open house, and it'll be held at the Roosevelt Community Center in downtown San Jose off Santa Clara Street. And we'll have a bus, so it'll be a good time. Okay, thank you.
So that includes our presentation on the agenda items. So Chair, we can move on to public comment.
Thank you so much. And we have at least one speaker card here in the room, Harry Neal. And we'll see if anyone else wants to speak in person, then go to online.
Good morning, Board. I hope you've all had a wonderful time with this presentation. Thank you, staff and InfoStrategies, for your time. I submitted a written public comment, and I want to highlight a point. In the strategic plan, I believe that any successful future for VTA includes one where light rail is a faster, more efficient, more competitive option for travel. And as such, I urge the board in the strongest possible terms to prioritize to the greatest extent possible swift implementation of the speed and reliability program. There are more details in the public comment in your packet, but we should absolutely be increasing the speed of light rail and making sure it is as efficient and as competitive as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak in person? And if not, we'll go to online public comment.
We can go to online comments.
Okay.
So the timer isn't working, but I'll keep time on my phone, on the phone timer. Roland, go ahead and unmute when you're ready and go ahead and start.
Yeah. Do I get 1 minute or more?
You get 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Outstanding. You don't need that much. So what I would like to do is to speak to the email I just sent to the entire board, which addresses the comments that the consultant made around the 9 o'clock and 21 minutes mark earlier this morning, which states because of housing difficulties, because of commuting times, it makes it very difficult to maintain a good work-life balance if you're spending so much time commuting. And then the consultant concluding by saying, this is interesting that it came up. Well, all you have to do is to circle back to what happened to 2018, when VTA displaced all the employees who were staying in their mobile homes during the week so that they could be closer to work and not have to do with all this commuting. And then during the weekends, they would head back home and spend time with their families. And the person responsible for this was VTA's former director of real estate, who basically opined that this was essentially wasted land that should be earmarked for redevelopment. Right now, it has been reused for these, mobile homes in the city of San Jose, and there is RV parking in there. There's 6 acres, but quite frankly, you cannot expect to have VTA employees having to share facilities with the city of San Jose unhoused. And that, I think, should be a top priority as far as this board is concerned. Take care of these employees and make sure they can have a reasonable balance between life and work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have another person. They didn't have their name, but it's guest 408-706-8150. When you're ready, please state your name and go ahead and talk.
Good morning, board members and staff. My name is Doug Muirhead, Morgan Hill resident. As far as improved mobility is concerned, I am disappointed that you don't share my desire for transportation options for all people to and from all locations in the county. As far as governance is concerned, we need people on the board that are passionate and dedicated. I am disturbed by the number of absences at this workshop today, especially our 2 county representatives, but thank you for this presentation, and I'll be at the open house next week. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's all of the public comments, Chair.
Thanks so much. We'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. And I want to start by expressing my appreciation for all the work and this exercise and really letting us be interactive and taking our feedback in this way. But I want to bring back if there's any other comments, things people would like to add. Sure, let's go. Director Sell and Director Jane.
Thank you for this process. This is the first time of me going through this as a new board member. But I was wondering, what do you think about, we currently are working on projects at VTA, and future will be working on projects. I was just wondering if there could be a tie so that we can understand when we end this process, like these goals related to these projects, and that would give the community a sense that this is why we're working on these projects, because it relates to this goal. And then along that line, accountability, so there might be a dashboard that says these goals relate to these projects, and these projects will finish at this time, and hold staff and VTA accountable for those projects finishing in that time frame will build more credibility in the community. So those are just some considerations I suggest.
Yeah, thank you. That's absolutely yes is the answer. In particular, you'll see that once the objectives and initiatives are laid out, specific projects will become initiatives that are under specific goals, right? So there are projects that are already in place, and they're going to be listed as initiatives that relate to those objectives and goals, and there will be accountability built into those initiatives, as I said, with the timelines and the metrics. Now, when it comes to implementation and a dashboard, that's a conversation we're going to have as we get closer to releasing the plan. But certainly in our experience with other transit agencies, having a public dashboard where you show how you're making progress on the plan is a really important part of holding yourself accountable.
Thank you, Director Jane.
Yeah, I see in the mission improving your transportation experience through collaboration and innovation. And I think sort of the elephant in the room is AI and technology, how that's going to affect our operations. You know, self-driving cars, Waymo is coming here. We need to take that head on and understand how that's going to impact our operations going forward. We can use that for productivity enhancement for our employees. And so, you know, one of the KPIs I think should be productivity of our employees. And then, so I think we can use technology to do collision avoidance of our bus drivers and things like that. I see that at APTA conferences, people are considering that. So we really need to embrace that technology is coming, and it should be part of our strategic plan. The other question I had was that, you know, VTA is the congestion management agency for the county, and congestion management wasn't actually even discussed. And so there's VMT reduction. You know, we talk about multimodal, but, you know, I'm on the transit app, looking at the transit app of how I would get home from here. And there's no way for me to put in that I have a bicycle. And if I do say I have a bicycle, it's going to make me bike the whole way. But the technology app should consider that I'm operating multimodal. I might be using bay wheels or a scooter, and it should be minimizing my transit time. And so whether I have to go further on my bike to have to make fewer transfers on buses or light rail should be part of the algorithm. And so, because that's what people care about, is minimizing their transit time. It's the main reason why people don't ride transit is because it's faster to drive. So how do we incorporate the technology to make it so that we can account for somebody has a scooter or they have a bike, but they're still going to take light rail. So that's not in the transit app. So VMT reduction should be very key. And then finally, you know, a lot of the funds that we get are from greenhouse gas funds, low carbon fuels, and all of that. Sustainability should be very key in our thought process of how we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if we could move to the facilitation, because we're going to get a lot of these comments. I think I'm not sure if I was clear, but when we go through what you've put forward on these easels, we can have more discussion like this. Would that be okay with you, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I wasn't clear that the note that I heard was that we were wrapped up with.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would love to go through these, because that'll provide an opportunity for you to give more comments like this.
I think that sounds great. So
Okay.
I had to answer Command Director Burt. Does that sound okay to you to go with that? Or okay, let's see that. Thank you.
Great. Yeah,
Thanks
this is
for
your opportunity,
jumping in. I
so we
appreciate
want to make sure we make the most of it. I'm sorry I have to carry this handheld mic around, but I want to make sure you hear me here. So I'm gonna start with what we asked you. What resonates about the strategic framework and what it is that you think really fits well. We heard a couple of comments related to economic development and TOD, so enthusiasm for that, which is great to hear. We heard about regional mobility as being something that really matters, navigating between multiple transit systems, affordable and revenue-enhancing transportation services. Like people like that. Some of you liked that idea. We heard that the engaging of the workforce and focus on employee needs was something that a lot of you appreciated. The innovation, and particularly as it relates to sustainability and financial and environmental and fare box recovery, these are kind of the innovative things that you appreciated. Appreciation of the fact that safety was in there and the safety of passengers and employees was in there. And then some people really liked the mission, and they really liked the way that this exercise itself is going, which I love to hear. But that you wanted to see what the more specifics will be, and of course, yes, you will see more specifics going forward. Any of these that anyone wants to kind of expand on in terms of things that really resonated that you wanted to talk about on any of these comments?
Go ahead, Director Burke.
Yeah, so when you alluded to sustainability, as Director Jane just mentioned, environmental sustainability I can't find anywhere, and this has been a core value of our organization. So that was one of the more glaring omissions of the whole plan as I see it, and so that I wasn't sure whether.
Yeah, we'll get to what's missing for sure. That's over there. Yes.
Whether that. But what you just cited on sustainability, we have a reference to financial sustainability. So I'm not sure what form of sustainability you're referring to.
Right. Yeah. It's what's written on here is financial and environmental, but I see what you're saying is you didn't really see the environmental component. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nowhere in the document.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to emphasize this has been a core value of the organization, and it's nowhere in the document.
Yeah, and it still is in the values. So the question for you is, to what extent do we want to incorporate it elsewhere? I certainly think you'll see it reflected in the initiatives and the objectives, but yeah, the question is, do you want to do it?
I should say it's nowhere in these 6 key goals is what I meant.
I'm sorry, anything else on what resonates? Before I move to, because I know you guys probably want to talk more about what's missing, so I want to move to that. That's always everyone's favorite part. So you have, what do you care about that you don't see here? So some people wanted to see a little more around mobility. Obviously, mobility is a goal, but there were some specific things about mobility that people wanted to see clear about the meaning of customer experience being something that somebody identified, making sure that we find an effective and dynamic way to expand ridership. So maybe calling that out, reducing cars on the road. We just heard about that earlier too. Economic development, recognizing a linkage to improve mobility. So the linkage between economic growth and improved mobility is something that you'd like to see called out. Identifying the needs of riders of necessity. So this is kind of getting at the equity issue and maybe being a little more clear about that when we talk about mobility. So a lot about mobility. On innovation, the impact of Waymo on VTA operations. So talking about that, talking about the role of technology to improve operations and safety. So getting more specific about that. That sounds like something we could include in the objectives. Innovation in mission, but not explicitly in goals under improved mobility. So getting innovation called out under mobility. And financial sustainability should clarify that reduced costs includes embracing emerging technologies. So being clear about innovation as part of financial sustainability. Under customer experience, so we heard, it says here, speed up light rail, fencing, gates, grade separation. So some operational things with respect to customer experience that perhaps could be under the initiatives. Bus stops and light rail stop conditions and focusing on condition as being part of customer experience absolutely makes sense. Efficiency with regard to moving people, and expanding ridership. So again, ridership is something that's coming up as part of customer experience and mobility. So having the bus be on time, making sure the frequencies are increased, those are all core aspects of customer experience and known ways of increasing ridership at transit agencies, right? So that's something people wanted to see. Okay, on process, so data that can help connect the data to the vision. So making sure we're clear about how we're going to use data in here, reviewing past goals to see where we may have fallen short so that we can review what those unmet goals are and make sure that we're incorporating that. There's some more on collaboration, so making sure that community colleges, high schools, and schools are included. And then communication engagement as part of the DNA, so not just for the planning and service, but a broader story about how engagement is part of what we do. And then workforce, even more. So even more on workforce would be helpful in terms of it should be strengthened to speak even more strongly to the trust and psychological safety and individual initiatives. So even more a focus on that. And then again, what we just heard, did not see sustainability and climate change, climate crisis, reducing emissions, electrification. So people want to see that in here, and it was not explicitly in there. So anyone want to expand on any of these that they feel strongly about and want to talk a little more about? But I think a lot of these are great ideas for objectives and initiatives that we can put in the plan.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Burke.
Yeah, thanks. So the one that I'd like to go a little deeper on is the issue of future technology. And it's something that the organization, including Carolyn, has really embraced as an intent for the future, even if we don't yet know what those technologies are necessarily going to be. But in my mind, it is critical to enable the improved mobility for the financial sustainability and otherwise. And as Mayor Mahan has said, if we, through SB 63, get additional revenue, and 10 years from now, we're doing more of the same, we will have failed. And so I would really like to see that as more clearly called out on what we mean by improving customer service, how it would affect our financial sustainability and other factors, and then build that somehow into one or more of the KPIs.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to respond to that because I think those are all good comments. I appreciate this has been coming before the board. I just want to recognize that some of the things we talk about can be in tension with one another, and they don't have to be, but just to call that out, if we're having these discussions about innovation and transforming the workforce, then I want to make sure that just taking the strategic plan, that all of the goals and initiatives are aligned so that that is not counterproductive to the goal of improving workplace culture. And it's not increasing surveillance or making scheduling more uncertain or giving people uncertainty about where their jobs are going to go. I believe there are ways that we can use technology to improve both service to our customers and the experience of our workforce, and have people be doing work that is more meaningful and goes to some of the other things that were brought up. But I think that's just one example. We don't want to have these disconnected initiatives. We want to have that high-level view. That is an appropriate place for the board to be weighing in, but I'll just give that kind of meta feedback for this plan to make sure that there is an integration with these things. Because if we pursue them without that connection, then it can be incredibly counterproductive.
All right, well, let's talk about some of the obstacles, because the more you understand the obstacles going forward, the better you can include things in the plan that will help overcome those obstacles, right? So revenue always comes up as an obstacle, right? Reliable stream of revenue that supports meeting and exceeding the needs of riders of necessity and commuters. So yeah, you can't do any of this without revenue, and perhaps that's something that we want to put in one of the objectives or initiatives, right? Values and culture, overcoming the "this is how we've always done it" mindset. Well, somebody's speaking to my heart here. As a former innovation person, I definitely agree with that. That often can be the mindset, and how you deal with that. That's kind of the core of what a strategic plan is intending to do, right? Is to focus you on what we're going to do and not just to continue to do what we've done in the past. But yeah, absolutely critical in the success. Governance. So these couple of things that came up. One, some obstacles could be labor rules and agreements, public trust, and ridership levels. So just you have to get all those things to work in order to have the strategic plan be successful. And then it says governance, lack of institutional knowledge and expertise, board members who cycle in and out. So that's interesting that you're kind of calling it that perhaps the cycling in and out of board members is a little bit of a hindrance and something that could potentially be dealt with in the plan. Collaboration, stakeholders and workforce. So it says bringing in other stakeholders that are involved and having an engaged workforce. So I guess these are potential obstacles that if we don't make sure that we're collaborating with stakeholders and with the workforce going forward, it's going to be difficult to implement the plan. That's how I would read this. But if you wrote that and you have a different interpretation, please let me know. But that makes sense to me. And then, okay, there were a number of operational obstacles that came up here, and I'll go through these quickly. But these are interesting because operational obstacles to implementation are some of the easiest to identify, right? Because we can say, oh, we need to get this operational thing working, and then we can move forward. So it says grade separations to speed light rail to areas with high growth, first mile, last mile, collaborating with cities on shuttles to get people to and from bus and light rail, last mile connections to transit. So two people agreed on that. Grade separation to speed up light rail. Higher frequency targets certain demographics for fee reduction. So that's kind of an objective and initiative for operationalizing. Signal priority for buses and trains. So a lot of emphasis on that. First, last mile again with bicycles, more bicycle infrastructure. Enhanced safety, so using technology with cameras for users. First responders for security. Okay, TOD, using public and private partnerships to increase TOD projects. And again, grade separation seems to be a theme. Speeding light rail, again. So a lot of things around how we can improve the operation. It's basically saying that in order to be successful in achieving these goals, there are a lot of operational improvements that have to go along with this plan. And those are all things that we can look at as potential initiatives in the plan. And then implementation. Nothing happens without follow through. How will we ensure all goals move forward? Absolutely, implementation is perhaps the biggest obstacle to successful strategic plan. And then look at specific strategies and intentionally anticipate inadvertent consequences. Yeah, if we don't do that, we're in real trouble. So does anyone want to expand on any of these? I don't want to call you out on any of them, but does anyone want to talk about any of these more and say a little more what they're thinking?
I think we're good.
Okay. Great. Well, this has been a really productive and fruitful discussion. I appreciate all of you really taking part in this exercise. We're going to take all this feedback and incorporate it both into the framework itself as well as, where appropriate, into the objectives and initiatives. And I really appreciate that we had this opportunity. So thanks for participating in this exercise.
Thank you. One last chance. Any final comments that folks would like to make? Yeah, Director Sell, please.
To congratulate you on this process. In just a short amount of time, you collected all this information from all of us. So in the same way that you were efficient with your time, I'd like VTA to be efficient in this process. And so you'll help us do that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, please, Director Kamei.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the presentation and, all of the work that has been done so far. It's really exciting to see how we're moving forward. One of the things that I think about, and, as you were talking about the obstacles to implementation, I was thinking about where we spend our time, whether it's as board members or as staff. As a board member, and this is my own opinion, I feel that we spend a lot of time on the capital projects. They're very important, they're moving forward and all of that. But at the end of the day, we are nothing with, in terms of an organization without customers, right? We're doing all of this because of the people who ride the buses, ride the light rail, ride the train, and so I think that we have to start thinking about operations a little bit differently. And certainly, I think that the rider experience is, I've heard it a little bit more and more and more, and I think that it's critically important because that's what we want. And as we continue to grow as a region or as an area, we know that there's going to be more densification and infill, and that means that transportation is going to be much more important because I know that everybody loves their cars, but we've got to find better ways of being able to coordinate. And I'm glad to see the word collaborate with others in terms of making our area better. So, I hope that we start doing more in terms of focusing on operations, and maybe it's going all well and all of that, but I, as a board member, don't hear a lot about it. And you only hear about it when there are complaints, right? That should not be the case. And if we're going to encourage greater ridership, we need to make it better in many ways. So thank you. And I look forward to the next phases.
Thank you. Director Jane.
Yeah, so you did quite a bit of external engagement, and I know that you have a report here of the findings from the employees, but where will we see what we're hearing from the external engagement?
Yeah, so we already reported a little bit about external engagement findings in the last board meeting, so a lot of that is in that previous presentation. The internal ones were more recent, and that's why we reported on them specifically here. But you'll see that both of those running throughout the plan in terms of informing what's in the plan, and we don't typically want to name check people, right? We're not going to say like this person said this, but you will see them reflected in the plan itself.
Thank you. Director Weinberg.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation today and for all the work that you put into this. It was nice having being an active participant instead of just receiving information. I'm curious, have you spent any time looking back at our last strategic plan and identifying where we met our goals, where we didn't meet our goals, why we met them, why we didn't meet them? How has that informed this process so that 10 years from now, when someone asks this question, you can say we met even more of our goals this time? Now, of course, COVID hit us during the last time, so that obviously affected where we could go as an institution. But I'm just curious what past experiences you've looked at and how that's informed you so that we end up with a document that ultimately will bring us to success. I mean, this is a policy document, right? This is designed not just to have a final product that looks good, but to actually give the board and staff and the employees direction on how to get to a place that benefits everyone. So if you could just speak a little bit to that, I'd appreciate it.
So I can speak to that a little bit, Director Weinberg. So no, we haven't done that, but that's because in the previous strategic plan, we had separated the strategic plan from what we currently call a business plan, excuse me, which is where the initiatives and goals were housed. with the pandemic, all of that work was put on pause. So really, it's been calendar year 25 is the first year we've had the business plan and goals in place. So we don't have experience yet. And so one of the recommendations of the consultant team that we took very seriously is this is one of the reasons why we need to develop the strategic plan with the mission and vision and core values in conjunction with the goals, so we don't end up with something happening that causes that time lapse. So I do think that we can look at history of some of our KPIs, but we don't have a, from the beginning of the last strategic plan, specific KPIs set out because we really had just started that process. And so going back to one of Joshua's original slides, we do see that this updated strategic plan will replace both the existing strategic plan, but then the business plan process, because that was also very confusing to everybody, like why were we having two different processes and bringing them all together.
Thanks so much. Director Turner.
Thank you. I wanted to go back to the frontline employee in-reach findings. One of the comments there was a little concerning. It said that repeatedly mentioned VTA's tendency to start things but not complete them, and a lack of accountability. I know we're talking about accountability as we start to establish goals and objectives, but I wondered if there's a way of trying to find out what some of these things were that got started but not completed, and if there's any evaluation we can do on any of those.
So anecdotally, and even from the feedback we got from the InReach, we do have specific examples. Some of those we are already following up on, and this is where I'll give Carolyn credit in her absence. That's something she's really been focused on with us as chiefs in the last 2 years, is what are some of those initiatives that we've started? Are we finishing them? And I'll just use one example. We have a multi-divisional task force that's just focused on operator restrooms. It includes real estate, engineering, operations, and so construction's actually started. And so part of my hope is that that will be one example where employees can say, years and years we've brought this up, there hasn't been progress, now there's been progress. But also, going back to the fiscal responsibility, we won't always have money to do everything. So how do we, through our strategic plan, say, we have KPIs, are we gonna make them all? I hope so. Probably no. But if there's it's kind of like a variance report. If you're not meeting a goal, what is the reason why? What did we have to reprioritize? And be more transparent. I think that's going to be a theme throughout this as well. So giving that feedback also to our employees.
Thank you. Anyone else for director comments? I want to just say how much I appreciate your work, staff, just for this workshop process. I think the interactivity and the process was one of the best we've had. Really looking forward to this and how you're thinking of it. And I want to thank all our directors for really leaning in with some very thoughtful comments today. And thank you all for taking the time to be here. Anything else to wrap up?
I just wanted to echo the last thing you said. We have never done a workshop like this with board members that had, we had a lot of hesitation, like, will everybody participate? Will they be willing to get up from their chairs? I want to thank you all individually. Like, this was super helpful to us, and to really see you take this seriously, get involved, give honest and clear feedback. This is really going to make this a better process. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And over to Greg for a bit.
Yeah, Chair, and really to this entire group, on behalf of Carolyn, I just want to make sure that you hear through me from her just how appreciative she is of this effort and the work that's going on today, and especially with this crew, and just the importance of what this strategic plan means, not only to her, but to VTA and to what we do as we move forward. And if I could, I just, she provided a memo to everybody. I hope you had a chance to read it. The one thing that I will stress in that last piece is this an opportunity to reaffirm our purpose, define our long-term impact, and set a clear direction for delivering efficient, sustainable, and inclusive mobility across the region. It is a collective effort, and your engagement and leadership are essential to its success. So with that, I just want to say on behalf of Carolyn, thank you. Thank you very much for being here today and being a part of this, and making sure that we've got a path going forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you all. And with that, first, do any colleagues have any announcements to make? Okay. If not, then we're adjourned, and we'll see you at our regular meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, Suds. Go ahead.
I believe September 23rd is Free Transit Day. You get to ride light rail and bus for free.
And Director Arenas, please.
I invite everybody to San Martin as we are having our first open street. So it's called Country Streets. So it's a version of Viva Calles here in San Jose, done in South County. So we'll have one in San Martin, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy in the upcoming months. But this Sunday is the first one on in San Martin. So please join us.
Very cool. Thank you for that invitation. Great. Anyone else? If not, then we're adjourned, and we'll see everyone October 2nd at our regular meeting. Thank you all.